Democrats revived requests this week to delay the Senate confirmation hearing for Supreme Court nominee Brett Kavanaugh. This time, they're seizing upon the criminal conviction of former Trump campaign manager Paul Manafort and the guilty plea from former Trump lawyer Michael Cohen.
This nomination is now tainted with illegality.
No American citizen should be able to choose the person who will be judging them when they're subject of a criminal investigation, should those matters come before that judge.
I will be canceling my appointment with Judge Kavanaugh.
Democrats say the president should not get to choose a justice who could end up presiding over his very own case. A spokesman for Senate Judiciary Chairman Chuck Grassley said Kavanaugh's hearings will go forward on September 4th as scheduled. Joining us now, Susan Del Percio, MSNBC political analyst and Republican strategist. We also have A. Scott Bolden, chair of the National Bar Association's PAC and former chair for the D.C. Democratic Party. Thanks both for being here.
Thank you.
All righty. Susan, so you hear the arguments coming from the Democrats. What would be the response?
Well, I don't think that's a legitimate argument to say that Kavanaugh should not be seated because the president may or may not have a case coming in front. He could be recused. What would be a more legitimate argument that I don't think the majority in the Senate will listen to is that they have not been able to get all the records, all of his from the White House about Kavanaugh's decisions and his time under the Bush White House. And that's a legitimate concern. You should be able to have everything, his whole body of work in front of you to review. But the other is just, I think it's really weak, and I think it's the wrong political argument, frankly.
And to you on
I'm not an attorney. So
and you're not an attorney.
Someone who can answer. So I know. That's why, Scott, it's all yours.
And she's throwing it over to you now, Scott. So, Scott, do respond to that. And I do want to throw this tidbit in. You know, President Clinton nominating Ruth Bader Ginsburg, as well as Stephen Breyer. Again, does the argument flow both ways here?
Well, it certainly does flow both ways, and I think it's material, it's important, but it's not dispositive vis-a-vis Trump not being able to pick Kavanaugh or to even seat Kavanaugh if he is approved. So I tend to agree with my colleague there. But I agree with her also that the stronger argument is these documents that can't be produced from the National Archives or from the White House in time for this hearing. They're not asking for there not to be a hearing, which is their alternative argument. They're asking that until they get the documents to review what his recommendations and advice and counsel were to Bush during that time. It gives them insight into his thoughts, his processes, his views, and that's all fair game for a hearing. It's a much stronger argument, and delaying it for 2 weeks, 4 weeks until October, there's no prejudice to anyone other than politically. The Republicans want to rush this through, much like they've done on other issues that have come before the Congress and the Senate. And so we got to be careful here, because if there's no prejudice to the Republicans or the Democrats, it's like sending the Democrats into an oversight hearing or an interview of Kavanaugh with one hand tied behind their back. The documents matter, and everyone, Republicans and Democrats, should have access to those documents to prepare for this hearing.
Susan, should the Republicans say, okay, let's delay this for a while?
They should delay it until they can produce all the documents that can from the archives and then go forward. There's no harm in it. I don't understand. I mean, I get why they want to rush it through, but if they have to and they're waiting until after the election, if for some reason they lose the House, they'll probably lose the House, but if they lose the Senate, they'll still have 2 months to move it through. So they could power through a nomination and advise consent, but it just looks so bad. It's just exactly what's wrong with what Americans see. It just doesn't seem like it's fair and the right thing to do. You judge someone on their totality of work, and there's no reason to provide all the information. If they were to provide it 3 weeks ago, they could have started the hearing 2 weeks ago.
Scott.
But here's the other thing. The Republicans have the numbers. Judge Kavanaugh has an incredible resume. I will concede that. But what makes it worse is that they have the numbers to push him through. So if you're on the winning side or you got the numbers, barring November and the big blue wave that we all think is coming, or most of us think that's coming, then it makes you look even worse. Because if you got the numbers, then you can vote him in now, but you can certainly vote him in later once we're armed with the documents. That's both Republicans and Democrats. It makes no sense. It's a power issue. It's a political issue. And on this one, the GOP needs to stand down from a position of strength, not weakness.
Well, if we're looking at the latest Cook political report coming out for August, it does look, according to their estimations, 25-35 is what they're guessing in terms of seats that will be going to the D column, and only 23 is needed, as both of you know, to have a change in the balance of power. So if you do get a Brett Kavanaugh in before the election, Susan, does that not say, hey, look, you got to go with the Republican, because going with the Republican means I'm staying in power, the president, and I'm, as the president, doing the things I promised I would do. I'm just getting in another Supreme Court justice, for instance.
I don't think it really matters at the end of the day. If
the voters aren't going to care, is what you're saying.
The voters aren't going to care. In their minds, most likely, they think Kavanaugh's already gotten it. Like, they may have to go through a hearing. But as Scott said, they have the majority, so why wouldn't he get it? As far as the House goes, I think the only PR problem that the Republicans losing the House provides for the president and not having Kavanaugh in is that if the Democrats take control, then they can begin impeachment proceedings right away. And then you may not have then the question is, you definitely want to have a seated Supreme Court justice. But you could still do it. You still can get it done in 2 months after Election Day.
Or you also still have the majority of Republican nominees who make up that course. So you're not really losing anything. And let's be real about this. Those 30 or 40% of the voters who really support Trump no matter what, their big issue is immigration. Their big issue is what else? We can run them off. Although immigration is the economy, so forth and so on. And I doubt that the majority of those who support Trump, no matter what, as my colleague said, care one way or the other about Judge Kavanaugh being seated, except that segment of supporters like the religious right who want abortion to be made illegal in this country, and that's a segment of his support. A segment of the Republican Party, but the numbers aren't there. And so the Republicans certainly aren't going to let this go past November 4th, but being armed with the documents is fair, it's appropriate, and necessary.
Susan Del Percio, always great to have you. You too, Scott Bolden. Great conversation. Thank you so much. And that wraps it up for us this hour right here on MSNBC. I'm Richard Louie. Thanks for being with us the last couple of hours. Stay with us for